So this very first provision of this Outer Space Treaty, it basically makes it clear that no matter there are very few countries who are pursuing their outer space research. So as far as the need of this treaty or the background is concerned, this whole issue comes into prominence after launch of Russian space satellite named Sputnik, and it happened in 1957. So launch of Russia's space satellite Sputnik in 1957, it overall paved the way for the need of such treaty, because that time it was the era of Cold War, and this Cold War conditions, it finally, this Cold War situation was finally leading to a space race, or you can say space war scenario. So outer space was turning into something which can lead to the space war between these two superpowers, that is America and Soviet Union. So for a stable framework to use this outer space, UN General Assembly, UN has also trying to, at that point of time, UN was also trying to overall prove to the world that, okay, I'm here to settle all the things, because that was the responsibility being given to United Nations. So for a stable framework to use the space, UN General Assembly, it formed a committee. Okay. So UN in its effort to form a stable framework to use outer space, formed a committee, and the committee is known as COPUOS. This was the name of the committee, COPUOS. That means Committee on Peaceful Use of Outer Space. This was the name of committee, COPUOS, and it happened after the launch of Sputnik. So basically, these were the situations, and on the recommendations of COPUOS, that is Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, overall, every major country at that point of time, they realized the importance of an international treaty on managing the affairs of outer space, and on that pretext, in 1967, this treaty came into existence. And India also, this is the treaty signing ceremony. So, okay. So these prominently the big three powers, that is US, USSR, and UK. These were the guiding force behind the signing of the treaty, and this picture overall denotes this scenario. Now, about the treaty, what basically some features of this treaty, let's discuss those things. So the treaty, this outer space treaty, it draws on several previous United Nations General Assembly resolutions. So, treaty draws on several previous United Nations General Assembly resolutions. There were earlier resolutions by United Nations General Assembly, and this treaty overall, whatever needs to be done, all those provisions, they were elaborately, they were treated in that treaty. For example, there was a resolution 1962, which is regarding the declaration on legal principles governing the state activities in the exploration and use of outer space. So, this was the resolution, and similar other resolutions, they were also being made part of this treaty. So, that's how this treaty came into existence. Now, let's analyze what were the various provisions of the treaty. Provisions of the treaty. And always keep in mind that still now, this is the only international arrangement which is, you can say, as an international law on governing this outer space. So, in 1967, the challenges at that point of time and what challenges might occur in the future, they all were being taken care of, but obviously things have changed drastically. So this treaty also needs to be overall analyzed, and it needs to be modified, keeping in mind the present situation. But what were the provisions at that point of time? First provision of the treaty was the exploration and use of outer space shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interests of all the countries, and shall be the province of all mankind. So this very first provision of this Outer Space Treaty, it basically makes it clear that no matter, there are very few countries who are pursuing their outer space research because they are technically and resource-wise capable to do so. But this outer space cannot be just the benefits, they cannot be limited to those countries, and it is for the benefit of mankind. Every person on this planet, they all have a stake in this outer space, and benefits should reach everyone. So, there cannot be a concept like a space colonialism. So, that was very evident from the very first point of this treaty. Second important aspect which was mentioned in the treaty was outer space shall be free for exploration and use by all states. Again, the similar feeling that because that was the time in 60s when colonialism, okay, that just that had ended, and still that fear of being exploited that was very rampant. So it's also included in the treaty that outer space, it shall be free for exploration and use by all the states in the world. The third provision of the treaty was outer space is not subject to national appropriation, it is not subject to national appropriation by claims of sovereignty. So various countries, they cannot claim their sovereign status in the outer space by claims of sovereignty by means of use or occupation or by any other means. So this provision was also clearly mentioned that these superpowers, they should not treat outer space as their sovereign territory. So that was the third point. Fourth point in the treaty was states shall not place nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction, in orbit or on celestial bodies or stations like International Space Station or station them in outer space in any other manner. In outer space in any other manner. So that possibility was also being denied in this treaty. The next point, important point of the treaty was that the moon and other celestial bodies, they shall be used exclusively for peaceful purposes. So all the lunar missions or interplanetary missions, they should have exclusive peaceful purpose. In any other way, for military applications or for a strategic usage, they cannot be explored. So that was also mentioned in this treaty. The next point in the treaty was astronauts which will be sent in the outer space, astronauts shall be regarded as envoys of mankind. Again, instead of national appropriation, these astronauts, these space missions, they should be considered in a global way. Okay, so that was also mentioned. The next point of the treaty was states shall be responsible for national space activities, whether carried out by governmental or non-governmental entities. So a space mission which is carried out from any country, whether it is run by the mission was run by some public sector government agency or from a private agency, the mission launched from that country will have responsibility of that country. Doesn't matter whether it is governmental or non-governmental. So that's also being made very clear. Next point of the treaty was states shall be liable. States shall be liable for damage caused by their space objects so that situation was also the treaty was quite visionary, because in 60s if the treaty includes this point that if any country it causes any sort of damage to the outer space, you can say whole whole infrastructure, so that country will be liable to pay damages. Okay, so that's also included. And lastly, states shall avoid the harmful contamination of space and various celestial bodies. So generally, looking at the treaty, okay, all these 9 salient points, we can say that all the important aspects, the challenges, the all the threats which were like which can be foreseen in the near future at that point of time, they were all included in the treaty. The most important aspect was to put a stress on this thing that outer space cannot become an issue of national appropriation. You cannot have sovereign claims over a part of moon or some other planet. And space war scenario, like you cannot put your dangerous weapons of mass destruction in the outer space, in your space stations or in various orbits. So all these possibilities, they were being discussed and they were put in this treaty so that the major powers at that point of time, they should follow this strict regime and such threats can be taken care of. So that was about the provisions of the treaty.